the radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Wednesday, November 26th. Let's see, I'm back again. It's me again. Some people seem surprised. What are you doing here if you're surprised? All right, we are going to do some more news today. There will be a show tomorrow. Tomorrow's show will be dedicated to talking about Thanksgiving and I think its significance and meaning. So we'll do a Thanksgiving show special tomorrow. There will be shows Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And Saturday, Sunday, we'll start doing our more shows focused on capitalism, meaning, and what is the West? The big question of the day: what is the West? So those are some of the topics. All right, should we jump into the news? A reminder that you can that the show is supported with contributions from you, the listener. Can't do it without you. So please consider a Patreon contribution, like a monthly contribution. Become a monthly contributor to the show. That'd be great. It's and if you're here live, then super chat. Super chat is the way to support the show and to kind of determine what I talk about, because you ask the questions, I talk about what you ask. All right, so there's this big story coming out of Washington, D.C., and out of the negotiations around the supposed peace deal between Ukraine and Russia, moderated by the United States, around the role that Witkoff has played in it, and the leaked transcripts, leaked video, leaked audio of his conversations with Russian advisors to Putin, and it's come to be known, at least I think in the Yaron Brook circles, at least, as WitkoffGate. WitkoffGate. I mean, this is so pathetic. It's ridiculous, and he should be fired. He should have been fired immediately. He should be excluded from all future negotiations and all future events and all future discussion about this stuff. But it won't happen because he's a Trump-like character. He's a real estate developer from New York City, and therefore is a world-class, uniquely qualified expert to do geopolitics, and nobody can replace him. So there's no way he's going anywhere. Anyway, let's review a little bit what happened. In early November, a 28-point proposal was drafted by Steve Witkoff and Putin's aide, Kirill Dmitriev. That proposal is leaked in early November. Its terms, including the fact that Ukraine would cede land and that Ukrainian military would have to be small and controlled by, in a sense, Russia would dictate it. All kinds of other military restrictions, no NATO participation, no foreign troops on Ukrainian land, and all the rest of it, completely one-sided. Basically, it's a 28-point proposal seems like written by the Russians. On November 21st, basically, President Trump basically demands Ukraine accept the deal by Thanksgiving. This deal, 28 points, as written. Otherwise, he threatens to cut off all critical U.S. military and intelligence aid, including intelligence. If Zelensky refuses, he goes on one of these one of his crazy, things about how Ukraine started the war and so on. And, Kiev is put under this impossible situation where it's being pressured to capitulate. Then on November 22nd, a day later, U.S. senators at a security forum are told that Secretary of State Marco Rubio is telling them that the plan is not American foreign policy. That indeed it's just a Russian wish list, and the U.S. was just passing along the Russian wish list. Same day, the administration, including Rubio, immediately deny that he told the senators that, and embraces the plan, claims it was authored by the U.S., and it's just a framework for further negotiations. And it's not a Russian wish list. It wasn't written by the Russians. This is an American policy. JD Vance, then, this is on the 25th. Of course, in between the 22nd and 25th, right, Marco Rubio flies to Geneva, meets with the Ukrainians. They now modify the plan with more Ukrainian input, and it's becoming less and less Russia's wish list and more taking into account Ukraine. But nothing has been agreed upon because Zelensky is coming to meet with Trump in order to finalize the final details of this, the most controversial points, like NATO membership and giving Donbass, the whole of Donbass, to the Russians. But yesterday, JD Vance goes on a Twitter attack against, senators like Mitch McConnell and others who were attacking the plan as basically forcing Ukraine to surrender, which it was absolutely that. And Vance is like, no, we have to back this initiative. This is the only way to get peace. Peace is the ultimate value. Nothing else matters. It's all about peace, 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 peace. And then yesterday, Bloomberg releases a transcript of a recorded call between Witkoff and Putin's foreign policy aide, Yuri Ushakov. And in this phone call, this is a phone call, and let's go back in time a little bit. This is let me just see. I had a timeline here of the phone call. 1 second. This is a phone call that was made. Where is it? I had it. Maybe it's gone. It's gone. It's disappeared. All right, we can recreate this. This is basically a phone call that was made. If you remember, the 20 point, a peace deal with between Hamas and Israel is approved and signed, and then Trump is kind of all excited and everything, and but he's pissed off at Putin, and he basically is talking about giving Tomahawk missiles to Zelensky, and he's considering giving them Tomahawk missiles, and is expressing his support for Zelensky, and is talking pretty negatively for the first time about Putin. And here it is. Okay, here we go. October 13th, Trump addresses the Knesset in Israel. He's in Israel. October 14th, Witkoff speaks to Ushakov. And they talk about, the fact that Zelensky is coming. And remember, Trump has suggested that he's going to approve Tomahawk missiles. And what Witkoff is advising Ushakov is that Putin called Trump before Zelensky arrives. Zelensky is about to arrive on the 17th. This is the 14th. Witkoff tells Ushakov that what they need to do is draw up a 28-point, a plan similar to what was just signed by Hamas and Israel, and that Putin needs to call Trump up and express support for, first of all, suck up to Trump, tell Trump how he admires his peacekeeping ability and how wonderful Trump is and suck up to Trump, which is standard protocol, right? And then suggest that Putin should suggest to Trump a similar point peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. And, that would, and that Putin should say that would be impossible if Trump agrees to the Tomahawk deal, right? He says, Zelensky is coming to the White House on Friday. This is direct quote from the transcript. Zelensky is coming to the White House on Friday. I will go to that because they want me there. But I think if possible, we have the call with your boss before that Friday meeting. Ushakov asks Witkoff whether it would be useful for Putin to call Trump. Witkoff says, yes. He also recommends that Putin congratulate Trump for the Gaza peace deal, say that Russia had supported it, and that he respects the president as a man of peace. And then Witkoff says to Shankov, from that, it's going to be a really good call. Here's what I think would be amazing, Witkoff adds. Maybe he says to President Trump, Steve and Yuri discussed a very similar 20-point plan to peace. And that could be something that we think might move the needle a little bit. We're open to those sorts of things. Ushakov seems to take some of that advice aboard, and he says that Putin will congratulate and then say, Mr. Trump is a peaceman, a real peaceman. Now, of course, 2 days later, Putin calls Trump. The call goes on for 2.5 hours. Trump calls it very productive. And, he announces that he is going to meet with the Russian leader in Budapest. And, he mentioned in his press conference that Putin had congratulated him for Gaza. And following that call, then Witkoff meets with Kirill Dmitriev. And according to an interview Dmitriev gave to Axios, Dmitriev told Axios he spent 3 days in Miami from October 24th. And that's when they pretty much put this 28-point plan together. On October 29th, after Miami, Dmitriev and Ushakov spoke by phone in Russian and debated, and again, the transcripts of this, go figure where that comes from. They debated how strongly Moscow should push for its demands in any peace proposal. The two aides are considering the various options, and Ushakov argues for asking for the maximum in the submission to the White House. He's concerned that if they give in a little bit, the U.S. might misinterpret any proposal that they're willing to compromise on anything, and they're not. He says he will talk to Putin, and this is the paper, this is the position they hold, and Putin will support this. We can't tell if that's what they talked about is exactly what the 28-point proposal is. But, all of this is being orchestrated by basically Witkoff and the Russians. And as far as we know, Secretary of State Marco Rubio knows nothing about this. Trump probably knows nothing about this. So, Witkoff is running his own operation, basically, clearly, unequivocally, one-sidedly in support of Russia. Now, I showed you, or we talked about the fact that on Tucker's show, Witkoff, a month or two, I can't remember when it was exactly, said how much he thought that basically Putin was a good guy. Anyway, October 17th, Zelensky visits the White House. It does not go well for Zelensky, of course, because Trump has just had a conversation with Putin, and we talked about this, in which Putin complimented him and said he wants peace and complimented him as a peace person. And of course, Zelensky leaves without any tomahawks, indeed, in a much weaker situation than he was before. Again, October 24th, 26th, Witkoff meets Dmitriev in Miami. October 27th, Dmitry and Oshkov have their strategy meeting, and then the 28-point thing is released. And now, as of yesterday, we have transcripts of all of this, of Witkoff basically dictating foreign policy for the United States and being one-sided, and, which is just unbelievable, Witkoff is basically giving the Russians advice on how to handle Trump. Compliment him, peace, man of peace, all this stuff. And if you do all this, the conversation will go well. Witkoff, at this point is basically a Russian agent. He's working with the Russians. And here's the thing, you have to feel sorry for the Ukrainians. I mean, justice demands that we side with the Ukrainians. Ukrainians were attacked with no provocation by the Russians. They are fighting in self-defense. The aggressor are the Russians. And since Trump came to office, he has treated Zelensky horribly. He's treated Putin with great respect. He has denied aid to Ukraine and basically taken on Russia's talking points as his own. Put maximum pressure on Zelensky as if Zelensky is a bad guy, as if Ukraine are the bad guys, to capitulate, to compromise, basically to surrender. Now, Zelensky somehow managed, I think because Marco Rubio is basically pro-Ukraine. Marco Rubio has a lot more sense than any of these other people, than Witkoff or Trump or any of his other advisors, it seems like. And has slowed things down and to a point where we'll see where this peace deal deals. But it's just, it really does seem unbelievable. Right? I mean, during the call last month, here's some more quotes from the call. Witkoff said, me to you, I know what it's going to take to get a peace deal done. Right? He's telling the Russians what they can expect to get from the Americans. Right? Donetsk, and maybe a land swap somewhere. But I'm saying, instead of talking like that, let's talk more hopefully, because I think we're going to get a deal here. He then goes on and says, the president will give me a lot of space and discretion to get the deal. So if we can create that opportunity, that after this, I talk to Yuri, and we had a conversation, I think that could lead to big stuff. Ushakov says, okay, that sounds good. What else would he say? Witkoff is basically handing him the whole thing on a silver platter. I mean, arguably, this is treasonous, but, if Russia is an enemy, but it's just horrific. Just horrific. And this is the quality of Trump, foreign policy. This is the quality of how he negotiates. These are the people he puts in charge. I mean, again, Witkoff is a real estate agent, a real estate guy, built commercial real estate in New York at the same time Trump built residential. And, I'll just put this aside, no proof, nothing. But Witkoff, in his real estate dealings in Manhattan, in New York, lots of connections to Russian expats, to Russian oligarchs, to Russian capital, involved in, remember, many of the buildings, the condos that were built in New York were funded and ultimately bought by Russian interests. So we have here a senior official in the Trump administration, one with a direct connection to Trump and reporting directly to Trump, not through Marco Rubio or anybody else, advising an adversary on how to handle Trump and how to handle him and what they can expect in terms of a compromise going into the negotiation. Who the hell needs to negotiate when you've got complete inside track on what the other party is arguing? So now, Witkoff, there's also the corruption issue of Witkoff's son managing a big crypto fund or something that the Qataris are heavily invested in. And of course, that had a lot to do with Witkoff shuttling off to Qatar all the time in his negotiations for the Hamas-Israel deal. This is not an honest player. This is not a rational player. This is not a America First player, America First properly understood player. This is a corrupt insider who wants to manipulate the geopolitical situation out there based on his whims and his favorites. Now, supposedly Jared Kushner was also involved in some of these meetings that put together a 28-point peace plan. Jared Kushner, I think has a lot of interest in the Middle East and who knows the players in the Middle East and has done a good job in the Middle East. I don't know if he knows anything about Russia or anything about Ukraine, and certainly I don't think he has the right geopolitical sense around Ukraine and Russia or the right moral sense around Ukraine and Russia. I mean, here's another, and then Trump defends Witkoff, and he says, yeah, this is how you negotiate. You leak some stuff, and this is just negotiation tactics. Yeah, if you want the other side, if you've chosen the winners of negotiation, you want to help one of the sides, this is how you negotiate. Now, of course, the other issue is, so Witkoff basically is the man responsible for that phone call that basically side-railed the Zelensky-Trump meeting in October. And you remember I told you, Trump is excited by the last person he talks to, and Putin has him wrapped around his finger, and that every time he talks to Putin, he goes against Zelensky. Well, now it turns out that Witkoff set it all up. Now the question is, of course, who leaked these conversations? The conversation between Witkoff and this Ushakov. There's a conversation between Ushakov and the other Russian. Who's leaking all this? Some claim that it's some rogue element within the American NSA who listens to all these conversations. Some say it was the Russians who leaked it because they want to embarrass the U.S. Some say it's some other foreign agents. Maybe the Ukrainians have the ability to listen into Witkoff's phone calls, or the Israelis, or somebody else. What's his name? Ushakov is now saying that it's really WhatsApp that leaked it. He's saying that the conversation between him and Witkoff was not done on a secure line, like a secure communication between countries, but it was actually done on WhatsApp. And now WhatsApp, by the way, just as an aside, as a funny, if you think it's funny aside, is an app that is banned in Russia. Unless you're a senior person within the Russian administration, then of course you can use it. Now, if it really was on WhatsApp, how is it intercepted? So either there's a back door to the app, which of course Meta denies, and somebody has access to that back door, Or Ushakov's device is infected with spyware. Or Witkoff's device is affected with spyware. Or they somehow, somewhere used an unsecured connection and didn't use WhatsApp. They just used a regular call. And now they're just claiming it was WhatsApp. Anyway, all of this, super intriguing. Who knows what'll come of it? Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, the confirmation is basically what we're getting now is confirmation that the points, the 28 points, all Russian points, Russian side of the deal, and that Witkoff, together with the Russians, are basically manipulating Trump, and that what's happening is that Rubio is trying to somehow save a deal, save Ukraine, save this from being a completely one-sided capitulation to the Russians. So good for Rubio, you know. At least it seems like he's good for something. Not much, but maybe something. Given how bad the Trump administration is, having somebody like Rubio inside trying to correct things as they happen, maybe that's cool. All right, just a note relating Russia to tariffs. I saw this graph today, and it's pretty amazing. Do you know the only country, we've talked about this in the past, but it's always good to highlight this, and basically under the heading of what has Putin got on Trump? I have no idea, but it's so spooky how pro-Putin Trump is, not only in negotiations between Ukraine and Russia, but with tariffs. The only country in the world that basically has, I don't know, basically no tariffs with the United States is Russia. Zero tariffs, basically. The highest tariffs are with China at around 40%, and then a bunch of U.S. allies. You know, like Japan is just under these effective tariff rates, so taking into account all the exclusions and everything. Given all the goods imported from Japan, the tariff is close to 20%. South Korea, it's closer to 15. Turkey's closer to 15. Germany's closer to 15. Brazil is now closer to 10. Italy is closer to 10. India is just under 10. EU is under 10. France under 10. Australia closer to 5. UK closer to 5. Mexico closer to 5. Argentina closer to 5. But you can see Japan, an ally, particularly vis-a-vis China. South Korea, an ally, particularly vis-a-vis China. Germany, Italy, NATO members. Yeah, high tariffs. Russia, nada. Zero. So I'll ask again, what does Putin have on Trump? I don't know. I really don't know. And I don't know if he has anything. It could just be that Trump just loves the guy. He just loves the guy. He admires the guy, loves the guy, and a lot of people around Trump love Putin and love the guy, admire the guy, and all of that. So there you have it. All right, today, the United Kingdom's UK government, the Labour government, have finally released the long-anticipated budget. People have long anticipated this. I mean, the UK is in deep economic problems. It really is struggling economically in terms of economic growth. It's got a massive budget deficit. What do you call it? Debt is going up. I mean, the UK is struggling. Is really struggling. And so a lot of people and one of the things that the Labour Party coming in, now the UK was already in deep trouble before the Labour Party came in. Labour Party came in and said, we're going to clean house. We're going to fix this. We're going to get it all in shape. We're going to get it right. So today's budget was an indication of their first real big budget. And, how are they going to do this? And, of course, what Labour's doing is what politicians in the West have been doing now for a long time. I mean, there are a few exceptions we can talk about, like Sweden and Canada, of all countries. But basically, politicians in the West, particularly in America and the UK, and now France, basically, have the view, and Japan, they cannot cut spending. Spending is sacrosanct. You can't cut it. You can't touch it. You can't reduce it. We talked about Deutsch and how horrific of a failure Deutsch was. They made cutting spending a dirty word, given how pathetic their efforts were. So you can't cut spending. And therefore, now in America, you can't cut spending and you have to cut taxes. So deficits just grow and grow and grow. And you keep cutting taxes and getting less revenue, and spending just goes out of control. And that's what we got. And in the UK, at least, they won't cut spending. They'll increase spending. But they at least are trying to close the deficit. They're at least trying by raising taxes. But of course, they can't raise taxes on the middle class, where most of the income is, where if you want to make a dent, you have to tax. They create many different types of little taxes to try to, somehow bring in more revenue or try to bring in some revenue. It really is quite astounding. So today they announced, for example, the UK has a sugar tax. They love these taxes, right? They love taxes that have a paternalistic aim. Oh, we're just trying to get you to drink less sugar. It's good for you to drink less sugar. And by the way, we'll raise some revenue at the same time. Well, they're expanding the sugar tax. This is going to be huge. This is going to have such a huge impact on the deficit and on paying back the debt. They're going to now add milkshakes, coffee drinks, and milk substitutes. They're all going to also have a sugar tax. I mean, that's huge, right? That is definitely going to bring in a lot of revenue. Those milkshakes, God, those milkshakes are really going to do it. Now, that's just one example of them tinkering. But generally, they're increasing taxes. They're increasing taxes. What they've done, you see, one of the ways you increase taxes, as you know, we have a progressive tax system. And so a certain range of income pays a particular percentage. And as you go up in income, the percentage that you pay increases. Now, a lot of times, these ranges are tagged to inflation. So as inflation goes up and as you get a raise based on inflation, just to keep you where you were before, well, the range goes up with you so you don't pay more taxes. Well, the UK is doing away with that. So the ranges are going to be frozen until 2031. So if the UK has inflation, and now the government has a clear incentive to inflate, then your wages will go up to match inflation, and you will keep getting bumped up to a new tax bracket and pay higher and higher and higher taxes as inflation goes higher and as your wages go up. So that's one way in which everybody is going to pay more taxes. If you drive an electric vehicle, there's going to be a new tax on that, right? There's going to be a tax on a 3 penny per mile. How are they going to figure out how many miles you drive? I don't know, but there's a 3 penny for electric car drivers. Plug-in hybrids only have 1.5 penny. I'm not sure why that is. And there's going to be new road pricing where you're going to they're going to charge you by the roads you use, by how much you drive. So you're going to pay more there. There's a significant increase in the minimum wages across. I mean, the UK has a convoluted multi-system of minimum wages. All of them are going up. That will increase unemployment among the people who are least able to deal with unemployment. It raised costs for businesses, but minimum wages are going up across the board. Homeowners, property taxes on the rich. If you have a home valued at more than £2 million, property taxes are going up. You're going to be paying more. Energy bills are going to fall, even though, because, I mean, the UK has, I think, the highest energy costs maybe in the world. They're going to push them down. I don't know where they're going to get the funding to do that and how that's going to work. Don't know. Train fares are going to be capped. They're frozen until March 2027. So much for the privatized rail system in the UK. Saving accounts, tax-free, are going to be restricted, more restricted than they are right now, and so on. In other words, it's a bigger families are going to get more money. This is part of the idea of trying to get people to have more babies. This is like these piecemeal things that are going to have no economic effect, but it makes people feel like maybe the government's doing something. Maybe there's activity. Maybe they're doing something to help me, but no, they're not doing anything to help you at all. At all. There's nothing going on here that has anything to do with help. UK budget, a complete disaster, a mess. Spending going up. Taxes are like tinkering. I mean, this is a Labour Parliament that was going to come in and change everything. I think the best way to describe it is it's just pathetic. Just absolutely pathetic. All right, we have talked quite a bit about Taiwan. We've talked about Japan, Taiwan, China, the conflict there, what couldn't happen, about whether America would come in and help. The Japanese are clearly interested in helping and see an attack on Taiwan as an attack on Japan, and Japan is definitely sending all the signals to China that it would intervene on Taiwan's side. Whether the United States would rein them in under Trump or not is not clear. Whether the United States would join Japan, again, not clear. In the meantime, Taiwan intends to pour $40 billion into defense to try to deter China. The idea is to make any attack by China on Taiwan just too costly to attempt. They're going to be trying to buy at least, hopefully the Americans will sell them, faster missiles, many more drones, and heavy buys from the U.S., but also bolstering the local producers of various types of weapon systems. They just want to get to a position, and this is exactly what Taiwan needs to do, exactly what it must do. They need to get into a position where they are just too strong for China to try it, right? China would probably win in the end, particularly if America didn't show up. China would definitely win, right? If it was willing to take the casualties, willing to suffer the cost, stick with it for a long campaign, they would win. They're just too big, right? But if the Taiwanese can build up a military that would just make the Chinese bleed, cost them enormously in both money, treasure, but also in lives, then a war could probably be avoided in that China just would never engage in it. The last thing Xi wants is what's happening with Russia. He cannot afford to send body bags of hundreds of thousands of Chinese back to China. So yes, Taiwan should arm itself to the teeth. I mean, I wish somebody would give it a nuke. That would solve the problem. But short of a nuke, sell them any weapon system you want, the most advanced, defensive, because that's all Taiwan needs is defensive weapon systems, asymmetric warfare, missiles, anti-air defenses, anything they need, ramp up in Taiwan. So it's good to see the Taiwanese taking their defense seriously and being willing to put some money behind it. All right, let's shift gears. Big gear shifts. All right. I've talked about this a number of times over the years, that in Israel, there is a draft, there's conscription, which I'm against, of course. I'm for volunteer army. But if you have conscription, there is absolutely no justification to exclude some people and to give them this massive benefit over others. Either, equal rights demands that you really equality before the law demands that you treat people the same. And in Israel has this massive exclusion. It has a draft for almost everybody, except if you're an ultra-Orthodox Jew. If you're an ultra-Orthodox Jew, you don't need to serve in the military. Now, the Israeli Supreme Court has now ruled that that is unacceptable and has demanded that the government start calling up the ultra-Orthodox. And there's a massive political battle going on right now in Israel. Netanyahu's government depends on the ultra-Orthodox to exist. It would fall if not for the ultra-Orthodox. The ultra-Orthodox are demanding that their people be excluded from military service. Everybody else in Israel, the entire Israeli population, wants them to be included, particularly after October 7th. Secular Israelis feel like the entire burden of protecting Israel has fallen on them, and that these religious ultra-Orthodox Jews, they don't participate. They have nothing. The only other portion of the Israeli population that's exempted from the draft are Arabs, Muslims, but also Christian Arabs, are exempted from the draft as well. Some volunteer, a minority volunteer, but they are exempted. So the question is, why are these ultra-Orthodox Jews exempt? And again, the entire secular population is like, they should fight for their own, freedom. We know exactly what Hamas would do to them if Hamas gained the upper hand. It would kill them. And you've got secular Jews basically defend these religious nuts. Anyway, this week, a representative of the ultra-Orthodox, Yisrael Friedman, who's an editor of a newspaper, an ultra-Orthodox newspaper, did an interview. And he was asked, why don't the ultra-Orthodox serve in the IDF? And this is his answer. Those who save the state are those who learn the Torah. So someone who harms Torah learners harms state security. He says, mathematically, what is incorrect about that? We are preserving the Jewish people. And in this matter of preserving the Jewish people, there is no equality of burden. Only we contribute. In other words, studying the Torah and praying to God is what actually stopped Hamas. Studying the Torah and praying to God is what actually saves Israel and the Jews. studying the Torah and praying to God is the only thing that matters, the only thing that matters in the preservation of the Jewish people, he is arguing. Now, this is barbaric, mystical nuttiness. These people are crazy. They live in a fantasy land of mysticism, of God's constant presence. He literally says that fighting in Gaza, in Lebanon, in Iran, doesn't count. Quote, that's not preserving the Jewish people. That's preserving the Israeli people. So he doesn't count himself as an Israeli? So Friedman thinks IDF is pointless. Well, not quite, right? Because he lives in Israel and he knows the security depends on it. He says, if the yeshivas, this is the schools where they study the Torah, don't study, the tanks won't start. The planes won't take off. Literally, God will not allow the tanks to turn on. God will stop the planes from flying. This is how barbaric and nutty and crazy and evil these people are. I mean, talk about evasion. He says, quote, the army has never won because of the number of soldiers. At West Point, they study wars from around the whole world, but not Israel's wars. You know why? Because the rules of war don't apply here. There's no logic here because God intervenes. God intervenes. Now that's BS. Of course they study Israel's wars. But what about the fact that Israel is missing about 10 to 12,000 soldiers that it needs right now in order to defend itself? His solution is, no, what we actually lack is learners. We need to increase study in the yeshiva even more. And then 15 elderly soldiers will win all these wars. You don't need thousands. You need 15, and they can beat all of Hamas and all of Hezbollah and all of Iran just with 15 because God will be on their side. And he says, I believe this with complete faith. I mean, it's it really is unbelievable. I mean, how primitive and barbaric these people really are. They really do believe this. You know, I think they are, if they don't want to, I mean, Israel should carve out a country just for them. Maybe in the middle of the West Bank, or maybe and even give them a portion of Gaza. And they can live in this country, and they can just pray and see what happens. And the Israeli military should stay out of it. And, or they should just leave the state of Israel. I mean, these are people who are a stain on the nation of Israel. I mean, just to think of the soldiers who are fighting. Now, the soldiers are not fighting for them, but they're the massive beneficiaries of those soldiers. The worsted free riders, they spit in those soldiers' face. Right? And this guy does not care. Does not care. And I really do believe the Israeli soldiers to stop defending them. Stop protecting them. Literally, take their neighborhoods and put them right smack in the middle of Gaza and let them pray. Let them pray hard. Pray all day and all night. This is the worst kind of primitivism and barbarism and mysticism that one can imagine. And these people are stuck in some ancient primitive, I mean, this is not even the Israel of the Bible. The Israel of the Bible Fights. They don't rely on God to save them. They fight. They don't always win. They lose often. Now, then they blame it on God. God punishes them by losing. But this isn't the Old Testament. But this is those guys in black who wear black. This is what they believe. They claim that, this is what, this is what they're instructed to do by the rabbis and by their leaders. This is what they're instructed to do by, the greatest scholars of Jewish learning today in the world. It really is disgusting. It's moral to dodge a draft if you're doing it for the right cause. This ain't it. This is not moral. This is despicable. And you can say it has no foundation in Jewish religion, but I'm not an authority in Jewish religion, and neither is anybody else in this chat. But this is the evil of religion, the evil of mysticism. And Jews are just as guilty as anybody else is of that kind of evil. So nuts. People say I don't go after religious nuts on the Jewish side. That's not true. This is one of many examples where I have. All right, you want to dodge a draft? Fine. If you dodge a draft for the right reason. But that is not the right reason. That is not the right reason. And they believe this. This is not them just coming up with an excuse. They believe this. All right. I see very, 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 very few Super Chat questions. It worries me. We're nowhere near the first hour goal, and we're approaching the end of the first hour, and we're going into the second hour. And God, if this is the amount of Super Chat, we're in trouble. The show's in trouble. So please consider supporting the show with a sticker or Super Chat or something. If you want to ask a question, please ask questions, particularly the $20 and $50 questions are valued and respected, and right now needed to even achieve a fraction of the goal which we need to get to. So feel free to jump in with questions, particularly if you're doing a 2050. If you don't want to ask a question, just do a sticker, as Naru and Z400 Racer have done, and anybody else. If you value the show, if you value what I do, what I say, if you listen to the show, I assume you're getting some value out of it. Well, show value for value by jumping in with a question or with a sticker. Thank you, Timbers Kid. All right, let's see. Tucker Carlson is, whoops, there we go. There's Tucker. Only getting nuttier, if that's possible. Well, I don't know that you can get nuttier than demons. It makes him as nutty as these ultra-Orthodox Jews. Crazy. Anyway, I thought I'd show you a couple of videos from Tucker, just to give you an update on Tucker nuts, Tucker crazy, Tucker insanity. Tucker has been saying lately, enough with the talk about Israel. Enough with talk about Jews. I've had it. I don't care about Israel at all. I just don't care. And I don't care about the Jews. So this is the video he posted. After saying he doesn't want to talk about Israel anymore. Doesn't want to talk about Jews anymore. Doesn't want any of this anymore. Here's the video.
This is a message aimed at Christians, who are the largest group of Israel supporters in the United States. And their view of Israel is colored not just by sentimental attachment, which is fine, or trips to Israel, great, no problem, but by a Christian heresy, the oldest of the Christian heresies, which is that God somehow prefers some people based on their DNA. And of course, the whole...
So even if you buy into the biblical story of, as many Christians, I guess, do, that God has, that the Jews are the chosen people, that God has chosen them. There's nothing about that, about DNA in that. It is interesting that this is how Tucker thinks in racial terms. What differentiates Jews is not DNA. There are many converts, not many, but converts to Judaism is possible if you commit to the ideas of Judaism. I don't recommend it, but if you wanted to convert, you could convert as long as you commit to the ideas of Judaism, to the practices of Judaism, to the religion of Judaism. It has nothing to do with DNA. It has everything to do with that commitment to those ideas and those practices, as irrational as they are. But to Tucker, he can only think in terms of DNA, and of course, he is not going to miss an opportunity to both attack Israel and attack Jews and attack the Christians who support the Jews, because some Christians believe that Christianity did not come about to replace the Jews, as the early church fathers absolutely did believe, but to be a religion side by side with the Jews. And the Jews would have to make a choice in the end, whether they would become Christian or not, when the day of reckoning comes. But in the meantime, they are the chosen people, and they should be treated with respect as the chosen people. Tucker is here articulating the old church fathers doctrine, which basically says Christianity is here to replace the Jews. And the Christians are now, in a sense, the chosen people. Christianity is universal, so anybody can be a Christian very easily and very quickly. Baptism and stuff. It doesn't require a difficult process like the Jews require. And so still believe that the Jews are chosen people is a heresy, according to Tucker. Tucker is going old school Christian here. Now, the Mormons think they're the chosen people. And let me tell you, the Muslims definitely think they're the chosen people. And again, it's based on ideology, not based on DNA. But Tucker's obsessed with DNA. We'll see in the next video his obsession with DNA.
And of course, the whole point of Christianity is that is no longer true, that there is no chosen people. The chosen people are people who choose Jesus. That is the Christian message right there. It's not an anti-Semitic message, by the way.
It just has implications about the Jews, right? Because the Jews don't see Jesus, won't come to Jesus. They're no longer chosen. And indeed, they really are, they have turned their back to Jesus because they saw Jesus. They confronted Jesus. And the Jews today are confronted with Christianity, and they choose not to embrace it. They choose to embrace a more primitive, older religion. And because of that, they are evil and bad. I mean, that's Augustine. That's Ambrose. That's the fathers of the church. The fathers of the church believed the Jews, as a people, were evil and bad because they didn't choose Jesus, because they didn't recognize Jesus as the Messiah. And as a consequence, they should be penalized for it. They should be treated badly. They should be humiliated. They should live very difficult, hard, oppressed lives. And that will remind Christians of this is what happens when you don't come to Jesus. So it's not anti-Semitic, but it's the foundation of all anti-Semitism. All anti-Semitism is founded on this notion of the Jews not finding, not recognizing, not coming to Jesus, and therefore they should suffer.
It's the Christian message. It's the core Christian message. And yet there are many, many self-described representatives of the Christian faith, the world's largest, who are daily sending a different message. And
Now notice, there are massive disagreements among Christians. Massive. I mean, the number of denominations of Christianity in the United States, unbelievable number, right? And then Catholics, and then different types of Catholics who disagree with one another, even disagreeing with the Pope. But the one he focuses on, constantly, is about the Jews. It's a little obsession for Tucker, isn't it? You'd think he was, I don't know, anti-Semitic or something.
And we should be very clear, whatever this is, it's not Christianity, it is heresy. This is a message.
All right, so the Christians who support Israel, or no whiter than that, the Christians who believe that the Jews are a chosen people until at least the day of reckoning, are committing heresy. I wonder what Tucker thinks the penalty for heresy should be. I mean, should he go by the church fathers? Or is he going to modernize his approach? I don't know. Curious. I have no idea what he thinks the penalty for heresy should be. All right, let's watch another Tucker video. We're on a roll with Tucker. This one is about Russia and his great respect and admiration for Russia. This is only 21 seconds long, so this is good. Here's Tucker on Russia. And Russia and the lesson from World War II.
My main instinct is that the lesson of World War II for some people was white Christian countries are a threat to the.
So the lesson of World War II for, I guess, a lot of people is that white Christian nations are a threat to the world. I'm trying to think of one person who believes that. Like, who are the white Christian nations who are a threat to the world? Oh, wait a minute. The Germans? The Italians? I don't know if Italians counts as white. How is that the lesson of World War II? Somebody explain this to me. The lesson of World War II, some people think, he says, like Tucker, this is not Tucker's lesson. This is, some people think this is the lesson. White Christian nations are a threat to the world. I don't know anybody who thinks that. Nada. Literally nobody. So.
World.
100%. Post-war consensus, yes.
And that's just.
Yeah, he says that's 100% consensus. He just said that is the 100% consensus. Who are the white Christian countries in World War II fighting whom? I just don't. It's an interesting interpretation of history.
Not a fact, actually, at all. It's why they hate Russia.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be the only majority white Christian country in the world.
So they hate Russia because it's the only majority white Christian country in the world soon. Because of demographics. Russia is going to be the only white Christian country in the world. Now, this is not only the reason this has nothing to do with the reason people hate Russia. Maybe it has to do with the fact that Russia started a war. Maybe it has to do with the fact that Russia is an oppressive society. Maybe it has to do with the fact that it's run by a murderous dictator. Maybe it has to do with the Soviet Union and the subjugation of hundreds of millions of Europeans. Maybe it has to do with the gulags. There are lots of reasons to hate Russia. I've never heard anybody say they hate Russia because they're a white Christian country. But this idea that they're, let's hear this thought
Soon.
all the way.
And they hate it. That is why they hate it, by the way. Let's just stop lying about it. That's why they hate it.
So they hate Russia because it's going to be the only white Christian nation left soon. Now that is factually just stupid, even if you could figure out what white means. Russia's 15% Muslim. I don't know what percent Asian, i.e. not white. Like, most of Russia is in Asia, not in Europe. There's a lot of Russian population in the Caucasus, off the border of Kazakhstan, in eastern Russia, who are not technically, whatever the hell that means, white, whatever the hell that means. So it's 15% Muslim, and then I don't know what percentage, more than 15% would be, my guess, non-white. Now, what is a country that's more white than Russia? I don't know. Ukraine? Ukraine is probably more pure. Again, whatever this means. Poland is probably more Christian and more white. I mean, very few people go to church in Russia. Very few people. Oh, somebody says Sweden and Norway, but they're not Christian. Like, religion's not a big thing in Sweden, Norway, and Iceland. They're white. They really are white, whiter than me. But they're not Christian. But Poland, Christian. And Russia's not particularly Christian, except for Putin. I mean, the guy's nuts. Disgusting. Racist. Despicable racist. The whole world hates white people. That's what drives Tucker, saving white people. They need a savior. Him and Donald Trump, saving white South Africans. That is the mission. It's so freaky and spooky and weird and disgusting and yeah, not good. Not good stuff. All right, another call for Super Chat questions. We're still $100 short of our first hour, and we're into the second hour, so we're $350 short of our second hour goal. That's what's up there, guys, $350. I don't know. You guys are saving up money to buy Christmas presents or something? Trade. You got to trade. Remember? All right. The story I skipped. I'm gonna just give you this tweet. I think it's a funny tweet, and I think it's pretty good. And then we'll go to the final story, which is about having kids. Part of my effort to have broader stories at the end of the show, deeper meaning, relating to purpose, relating to some of the big topics we're going to be talking about in the months, years to come. David Deutsch writes on Twitter, Israeli teenagers, who are, if anything, more online than Americans are a devastating counterexample to this dismal, mechanistic, anti-human view of humans, which is Jonathan Haidt's view, which you see it all the time, that what's destroying people is technology. What's destroying kids is the iPhone. And the reality is that Israelis are more connected. But when the time came to defend themselves, to put on a uniform and take a gun and go out there and fight for their freedom, those hyper-connected, iPhone-obsessed Israelis did it. And they did it courageously and heroically and amazingly. And this view we constantly hear now, constantly, by Jonathan Haidt and a bunch of other people. And Jonathan Haidt has done some good work on a bunch of different issues, but on this one, it's just awful. It's the iPhone. iPhone is killing our teens. It's destroying the human mind. No, this is the evil. The evil is technology. That's why people are depressed. That's why nothing's getting done. Well, Israelis are a counterexample, but I agree with David Deutsch. Here we go. It's a devastating counterexample to this. I love this part. This dismal, mechanistic, anti-human view of humans. That's perfect. That's perfect. Good for David Deutsch. All right, finally, I saw this headline. This is from a paper from the Institute for Family Studies. Institute for Family Studies. right? They have looked into polling numbers on people having kids. Who's having kids and who's not? Who's having kids and who is not? And it turns out that the problem of declining birth rates is a problem among liberals, among the left. It's people who self-identify as liberal or left of center who dominate the issue of childbirth. It turns out that marriage is more resilient among conservatives. Conservatives stick it out. So percent that have ever been married is significantly higher. So conservatives get married at a significantly higher rate than liberals. Now, it's declining. It's gone from 74% of conservative men in the 1980s to 57% of conservative men in the 2020s. But on the left, or on liberals, how they define it, it's gone from 61% to 35%. So conservative men, liberal men are not getting married. Liberal women, it was 83% among conservatives getting married, have ever been married. It gone down to 60% among conservative women. So still a majority of conservative women are going to be married. But among liberals, it's gone from 75 to 44%. 44% of young women have never been married. This is, by the way, all of these stats are for 25 to 35-year-olds. And the question is, have you ever been married based on ideology? And a majority of conservatives have been married by the age of 35, and a majority of liberals have not been married by the age of 35. And then if you look at having kids, again, same age group, 25 to 35. Are you having, have you had a kid? Percent that have had a child. Among conservatives, that has declined from 59% to 47%. But 47% of conservative men between the ages of 25 to 35 have had a kid. Women, it's 65, and it's gone up. More conservative women are having kids now than they did in the past. Between 25 and 35%, it's gone up to 71%. They're obviously marrying older men, significantly older men, and having kids with them, because the men are not having kids, but the women are, and it doesn't really work that way. Among liberals, it's gone from 47% in the 80s to 22% today among men, and from 60% in the 80s to 40% today. In other words, the entire crisis of childbirth is a phenomena of the left. And part of the challenge with that is the number of women who are on the left is increasing. So it used to be 31% of women were liberal. Now it's 36%. Among men, it's pretty much flat, 32%. So I don't know if that's true, but that graph was confusing. And then, of course, if you look at birth rates, the 10 states with the largest Trump margins, the Trump one, their birth rate has declined by about 10%, 11% actually, from 2001, the shifting parameters. But in blue states, states that have us one of the biggest margin, their birth rates have declined by 25%. Blue states are seeing a falling child population. Red states are seeing an increasing. Again, we're talking about just the most extreme, right? So the 10 states with the largest Trump or Harris majorities. So why is this? What causes this? Well, the reality is that, conservatives, religionists generally, view having children as a duty. They view having children as something that is part of a tradition, that's part of a religious duty. It's an essential part of life, and, is a must. The left, on the other hand, people of left orientation, if you will, view having children as an option to be weighed against everything else that life has to offer. So, for example, among self-identified liberals, women, for example, are much more concerned about career. And among Turning Point USA, young adults are going to say, having children is more important than having a good career. That's the thing that matters the most. So, this is an issue of values. It's an issue of values. And we're going through a period over the last 20, really 40 years probably, where the opportunities that women have in the workforce, in education, in life, are dramatically greater than they've ever had in all of human history. Men have always had opportunities. And those opportunities have increased with wealth and increased with the quality of life, standard of living in America. But women have gone from a position of having very few opportunities to having almost, if not exactly the same opportunities men have. That's a shock to the system. It's a shock to the society, the culture, the people in the culture, and it's a shock to women and a shock to men. Men don't know how to deal with women who now have careers and have self-esteem and have a life that they want to live and can live without being in the kitchen and taking care of their husband. And that's a shock to men. They don't know how to deal with that. But it's also a shock to women. Women need to figure out what is their value hierarchy, where do kids fit, how to deal with this changing value hierarchy, because now values that they couldn't achieve in the past suddenly can be achieved, like career, like wealth. And it's, and then they have to figure out, how do you balance? Remember this life-work balance, and how do you, women have this idea, this thing that is imposed on them. Can you have it all? Can you have a career and children? Like, men never had to deal with that. Nobody ever asked the question to a man, can you have a career and children? Nobody has that question. So, women are not put in this box. You have to choose one or the other. And right now, particularly among young women, it's like, whoa, all these opportunities exist. I'm going to go for the opportunities. And we'll see about children later. And maybe I won't have children. And suddenly I want to have children later because I want to live. Try out all these new things that are now available to me that weren't available in the past. And that's super exciting for them. Threatening for all you incels. And what is it? Men going their own way? Something like that? Yeah, it must be really challenging for all of you. But it's challenging for the women too, because I think many of them want to have kids, and ultimately in life will want to have kids. And I think it's rational for them to want to have kids. Not for everybody. But I think more will want to have kids. But they have a biological clock. They can only have kids up to a certain age. And they have other priorities for the first time in human history. And this is true in America. It's true in South Korea. It's true in Japan. It's true everywhere. Women suddenly have opportunities. And the top of the list is not having kids. And indeed, the top of the list is not getting married. Because suddenly they have these other opportunities. Now, I think a healthy, successful life can involve having kids, but can also involve not having kids. There is no one way. Kids are not a universal value. They're not a value to everybody. And as a consequence, some people will always choose not to have kids if they are granted that option. The sexual revolution, plus the increase in options for women, have given people the option, which is great. But I think over time, most women will want to have kids, even once they figure out how to handle it all. And there's no reason they can't have it all. There's no reason men can't help more with child raising. And there's no reason as we get richer that people can't have caretakers and schools and all the other things that will make it possible for two people to work and to have kids and to have it all. And to have them all as values. But this is something people are going to have to work out. And to expect there not to be a kind of cultural shift as a consequence of the expanding role of women is to think that it's I don't know. Of course, you're going to have a change in attitude towards childbirth and towards marriage as you increase the opportunities for women. Now, I know many conservatives, many of you listening maybe, would like to see those opportunities shrunk. I mean, Matt Walsh would like to see women go back to the kitchen, to the home. Full-time job in the home and in the kitchen and rearing children. That's it. And indeed, what's the term? Tran wives? Traditional wives? Trad wives. Trad wives are really in the Nick Fuentes crowd. Although Nick Fuentes claims to be a virgin and can't even imagine having sex with a woman because a woman, I mean, that's a lowly being. That's way beneath him. Why would he have sex with a woman? That's way beneath anything he would do. He claims he's a virgin because he's a Catholic. But I mean, good for the world that he's a virgin. I think that's definitely a positive. But having children can be, and for many people is, a huge part of life. For some people, it becomes, raising those children becomes their really, in a sense, productive career. And that's a legitimate productive career. For others, they manage to have children and have another career. And that's legitimate. Other people don't have children. In some families, the men do much more of the child rearing than they have historically. And that works. I mean, the beauty of having opportunities and the beauty of recognizing that the essential characteristic of human beings is as rational animals, as thinking beings, is that opens up a whole variety of options and opportunities. There's no one traditional way of living. Somebody asked, can one be happy if one does not have kids? Absolutely. Absolutely. Some of the happiest people I know do not have kids. I mean, there are days in which, if you ask parents whether you can be happy having kids is put into question. But happiness does not depend on any particular act in life. It depends on sustaining a character, it depends on having moral values and living up to them. It does not depend on pursuing any specific particular values in life beyond those universal abstract values. And having children is not a universal value. So, gay people can be happy and not have children. Heterosexual people can be happy and not have children. People can be happy and not get married. Although marriage is a huge value, not for everybody and not under all circumstances. One of the things that I learned from objectivism, I think correctly, but you guys judge. It's just because something has been practiced forever doesn't mean it's right. You've got to question. You've got to challenge. And the reality is, again, the role of women has really, really changed. And as a consequence, a lot of how families are composed, how families function, the decisions families take, the role of marriage in human life, all of that needs to be questioned and reoriented towards the world of rational beings with immense opportunities before them. I'm going to read this. John says, from a biological and evolutionary perspective, not wanting to have kids seems wacky. Having kids is the only thing all our ancestors have in common. Not true. Many of our ancestors didn't have kids. Their line has disappeared. They didn't have kids. A lot of people in history didn't have children. And some people had lots and lots and lots of children, something like 20% of the world population has the genes of Genghis Khan in them. Is one better than the other somehow? And the fact is, this is the difference. We are being of free will. We are being of reason. We are not a being whose actions are dictated by biology and evolution. We can overcome biology and evolution. We dictate the terms. We decide what to do, how to act. We decide whether to have children or not to have children. We decide who to love and who not to love, who to have sex with, who not to have sex with, and under what terms and what conditions. We are a reasoning being, not a being driven by some biological imperative or categorical imperative if you're Kantian. We choose our values. We must do it rationally, in a way connected to reality, to facts. And then we need to live the best life based on that. And that does not mean living a traditional life. That does not mean living a life dictated by biology and evolution. You get to choose. You get to determine. And right now, I think the culture is going through shock therapy because of the massive change in the role of women. And we will figure it out. People will figure it out, particularly if we elevate reason and rationality. And I feel sorry for all those trad wives. I feel sorry for everybody stuck in relationships because it's tradition, stuck in relationships because that's how it's always been done, instead of being in a relationship because you love it, because you want it, because you value it, because you have decided to be in that relationship. Choice, individual choice, guided by reason. That's what we should elevate. Not, and I don't understand quite the concern about, one day in the future, if we go at this pace, there will be no human beings. First of all, why do I worry about the distant future? I don't. I worry about today and the next 50 years maybe. But the distant future, I don't really care. Have kids if you want to have kids. Don't have kids if you don't want to have kids. I mean, consider rationally all the options. and take into account the enormous values that kids represent, why do you care if humanity ceases to exist? I mean, humanity, if it ceases to exist in a very distant future. We'll probably nuke ourselves well before that. Why is it your problem? You have one life, one frigging life. That's it. It's short. You know, maybe if you're young, 100 years, maybe 120 years. That's it. You got to make the most of that life. You're going to live that life. You're going to sacrifice that life for the sake of future generations down the road, maybe one day. I mean, one day they'll have designer babies in artificial wombs. There won't be ever a shortage of human beings. We'll just make them on demand. I know that scares some of you. But this idea that you should be a slave to future generations, and therefore you should live for future generations, and it's your moral responsibility to future generations, that is ridiculous, mystical, absurd, and irrational. You should have kids because you love kids, because you love the challenge of raising them, because you love the beauty of watching them grow up, because you love seeing babies and small children learn about the ways of the world. That's why you should have kids, because it's going to be fun. It's going to be really, 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 really hard. And it's going to be the biggest challenge you take on maybe in your life. But it's going to be fun. So, yeah. Don't have kids because of future generations. Don't have kids because it's a biological imperative. Don't have kids because you care about mankind's future. Have kids because you value kids, because you know you're going to really benefit from it. You might make a mistake. It turns out many parents do not benefit from it, but yeah. Have kids because they'll make you happy. But they might not make you happy. That's why if they're not going to make you happy, if you don't think kids are going to make you happy, then don't have them. Your happiness is a standard, not a biological imperative. Your happiness. All right. That is the news for November 26th, Wednesday, November 26th. And it went way longer than I expected. Way longer than I've got a hard stop, so we're going to jump into the questions. We're going to go through these. Hopefully, we'll get through all of them before my hard stop. Please feel free to ask more questions, particularly if they're $20 or $50. Wes, thank you for the $50 sticker. There were a bunch of stickers. Let me thank the various sticker people, and then we'll jump into questions. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Damia. Thank you, GGEF. Thank you, Xit. And I think one of you, it was your first ever super chat. That is, Dalmio Garcia. Thank you. First ever super chat, and $20 at that. So thank you. I appreciate that a lot. And let's see who else we have here. All right. Yeah, Z-Racer, Naruto, Timber, Parker. Thank you guys for the super chats. All right, let's jump in with some questions. We'll start with $50 questions. So we'll start with, and again, thank you, Wes, for the $50 sticker. We'll start with David. Do you consider yourself an extreme radical thinker? If what you say resonates with me, does that make me a radical? I definitely think of myself as a radical thinker. Extreme, it's not clear what extreme means, what exactly extreme means, but I definitely think I'm a radical thinker. And I think to the extent that you agree with me, you are also radical. Radical is, having a consistent set of ideas that is significantly different than the mainstream, than what is acceptable out there. And in that sense, we have an incredible consistent set of ideas that is, way out of the norm. I'm a radical for capitalism. I'm a radical for reason. I'm a radical for egoism. I'm a radical for existence exists, for reality. So yes, I think if you agree with me, you too are radical. Sorry, I know some of you don't want to be radical. Nick, thank you for the sticker. Thought Criminal, thank you for the sticker. Whoops. David again. I took advice and listened to Tyler Cowen's podcast this morning. He had on Cass Weinstein, a Kant, Rawls, and Dewey-loving liberal who spent 30 minutes refuting Hayek, Mises, Rand, and others for being too laissez-faire. Yeah, I mean, I hate Cass Sunstein. He's terrible. You asked me about reading their books, not about listening to their podcasts. I don't know about Tyler's podcast, but he has interesting guests. But yeah, Cass Weinstein is a Kant, Rawls, and Dewey-loving liberal. That's right. Kind of a left-wing libertarian, I think he calls himself. He wrote, I think it's the same, Cass Sunstein. He wrote Nudge, which is a way to nudge us into good behavior. Libertarian paternalism, he called it. But Tyler typically asks good questions, and Tyler is very thoughtful. I disagree with Tyler, and Tyler doesn't like Ayn Rand, and there are lots of things I don't like about Tyler, but Tyler's good. As an economist, he's certainly good. David, again, thank you, David. Do you know about statistician Hans Rosling studies showing declining fertility correlating with better educated women? Pinker, Zeihan, Gladwell basically plagiarize his work in their books. Yes, Hans Rosling unfortunately passed away a few years ago, I think. Was great. I mean, he has these fantastic videos where he shows all these graphs and he shows all this stuff. I mean, he was a phenomenal person, phenomenal statistician, and really his focus was on showing, that we live in the best of times. That you should stop being such downers. And absolutely, fertility is correlated with education, because as women get more educated and better educated, they have more options. And they want to do more things with their time. And that is a good thing. That is a good thing. So, so I agree. And I agree that Pinker and all these other guys, I wouldn't say plagiarize, because a lot of them, I know Pinker gives him credit, and I'm sure some of the others do. But yes, his work is brilliant and excellent. His videos are fun and entertaining to watch. Andrew, poignantly sad when Zelensky said that Ukraine must decide between its dignity and losing a great ally in the United States. I'm glad Rand wasn't alive to see the United States put Ukraine in that position and against Russia of all countries. Yeah, she would be horrified. Horrified by Trump generally, but particularly by Trump's behavior towards Ukraine and Russia. Put aside the question of whether to fund Ukraine, to morally support it, there's just no question. No question. At all. So, it's just horrible. Andrew, again, a psychological observation. I find it physically hard to focus on Tucker. Not sure that's rational. Focusing on evil can be right. And if my objectivist principles are firm, then facing opposite evil principles won't hurt too much. Yeah, but he is a kind of a slimy, dishonest, weaselly kind of human being. And that certainly can be difficult to watch. It's not that it's going to hurt you. It's just that it feels like a waste of time. It feels like you should be doing something better with your life. And it feels like a bolt of lightning should strike him down and knock him out, right? That they should silence him. And I'm not calling for violence, but it seems like the person up there, God, should take care of him if there was one. There isn't one, so we just have to fight against him in the only way we can, which is intellectually. It's offensive that he's so successful given how horrible he is. I think that's part of the problem. Christos, did you see Judge Stephanopoulos kick JD Vance out of the show for lying and evading on Tom Holman's bride? Unprecedented government corruption in plain sight. Current U.S. government is a banana republic. Kudos to George. Yeah, kudos to George. I wish he was better on other issues, but good on that. And yes, I mean, this is by far the most corrupt government in American history, I think. I mean, as we've said, the Trump kids, the Witkoff kids, I don't know if JD Vance's kids, but Holman, I mean, all benefiting financially at unbelievable rates, and maybe JD Vance too, we don't know, from the things that Trump is doing, from the things this administration is doing. I mean, you thought Biden's were amateurs in comparison. Biden's were corrupt. These guys are 10 times more corrupt. This one is from yesterday, SAQ fan. Is there any value in the Bible? Do the stories have any meaning, or is it all nonsense? I mean, no. I mean, there's enormous value in the Bible for anthropological reasons. The stories all have meaning. Most of the meanings are horrible, or evil, or bad. So the Bible has historic, anthropological, intellectual, value. As a guiding light in one's life, it is a disvalue. It actually does harm. It's not that it's nonsense. It's that it's advocating for evil, bad philosophy. And that its stories are leading you towards bad actions from an objectivist perspective, actions that destroy self. So, religion is no good. Religion is no good, and its founding texts are not good for human beings with an independent mind. They're good for dogma, and that's pretty much it. All right, guys, we've made nice progress, but we're still $86 short of our second hour goal. If you guys, it would be great if we met the goal. We don't have a lot of time, though, so we're pretty much would have to happen quickly. This belongs to my Western question because for some reason I cannot send $20 super chats anymore. Why were the spaghetti Westerns so successful? Why did people turn away from the classic Western story of good versus evil? Why did people prefer morally gray characters? Because that's the philosophy that had been inculcated into the culture. So spaghetti Westerns come out in the 60s, a period of moral grayness, a period that was preceded by decades of people undermining any kind of morality of good and evil, any kind of morality of standing up for justice and the good. Indeed, ridiculing that and making fun of that became one of the main things that cinema did in the following 20 years. Blazing Saddles is a good example, a movie that is really funny, but I don't like, because what's it making fun of? It's making fun of the things that made the Westerns great. It making fun of heroism, of moral certainty, of good versus evil. But that is the philosophy of the culture, and you get the art is a reflection of the philosophy of the culture. And this is the 60s. This is the rise of the new left, the subjectivism, the relativism of the new left, and the amorality, the lack of morality of the leftist agenda. Lincoln, thank you for the sticker. Andrew, with respect to Aristotle, I feel I could prove that a proper definition of man is the rational emotional animal, adding emotional as an essential. Rand, every thought a feeling, every feeling a thought. What do you think? No, because I mean, man is the rational animal because rationality is man's means of survival. Emotions are not means of survival. Emotions are, ways to experience life, but they're not means of survival. And then they're not essentially what makes man man. And indeed, emotions are consequences of conclusions which are generated by by cognition, by the more rational part of the animal. So, no, I think emotions are not a defining characteristic of human beings. They're also not, it's not clear that animals don't have some form of emotion. Certainly fear they have. Human beings are unique in that they have reason, that they are rational, that they can think, they can challenge, they can in a sense consider their emotions. They have enough self-awareness to consider their emotions. All characteristics of reason. Andrew, a tweet from a parody account called God. If you pray hard enough, nothing happens. And if you pray soft enough, nothing happens. Just nothing happens. That's good. Lincoln. News out of D.C. 2 National Guard members were shot dead outside the White House. Currently, flights to Reagan Airport are grounded, as it could be a possible terrorist attack or assassination attempt. Interesting. It'll be interesting to see what ultimately comes of this. Who is responsible? What is the purpose? I'm just checking the news feed to see if there's anything there. 2 West Virginia National Guard men killed in D.C. shooting near the White House. Shooting happened on 17th and I Street. The West Virginia governor confirmed the guardsmen deaths. They died. The D.C. police took one suspect into custody at the scene. The individual was wounded, but not critically, and received hospital care. The area saw a brief lockdown, street closures, and swift federal response with details on motive under investigation. Yeah. Hard to tell who did this and what they were trying to achieve. All right. Probably talk about it tomorrow on the news, if it turns into something. Lincoln, I despise how many view having kids as a sacrifice. What is more self-interested to your long-term happiness than having and raising the next generation of thinkers and entrepreneurs? Well, I don't know. It depends. For some people, it is a sacrifice. And they shouldn't have kids. So I don't know how you can say what is more self-interested to your long-term happiness. Ayn Rand didn't have kids. So to her, long-term happiness was much more important to finish Atlas Shrugged than to have kids. And to write The Fountainhead than to have kids. So I think it's a mistake. And why is it? I mean, you have to really think and you have to be able to articulate. Why is it so essential to your long-term happiness to raise the next generation, not just any next generation, of thinkers and entrepreneurs? And what if your kids don't become entrepreneurs or thinkers? Why is it in your long-term self-interest? You have to be able to have an answer for that. Lincoln, my stepmom was able to work her way up to CEO of a hospital at the university I attended and raised me as if I were her birth son. A CEO with no biological kids makes her an enemy of the right. Yeah, that's right. But think about the fact that Ayn Rand didn't have kids, and a lot of people don't have kids, and can they not be happy? Of course they can. Lincoln says, spelling clarity, it's the rights, and raised me. Yes, I think I figured that out. Thanks, Lincoln. All right, guys. All right, that went quickly. Quicker than I thought. All right, we hope. Thanks to all the super chatters and the stickers. Really, 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 really appreciate the support. Particularly David, who came in with 3 $50 questions. So thank you for that. I will see you guys tomorrow for a special Thanksgiving show. We will talk about Thanksgiving, giving thanks, the importance of that. And have a great, if I don't see you tomorrow, have a fantastic Thanksgiving. And don't forget to give thanks to what's important to you, to your values, to the people, and to the people important to you. And don't forget yourself. Don't forget to give thanks to you, to the choices you make, to the values you pursue, to who you have made you into. See you tomorrow or sometime in the future. Bye, everybody.